of President Donald Trump, in the face of right-wing activism, was shot dead on Wednesday while addressing an audience on the campus of Utah Valley University. Authorities launched a manhunt for the sniper. His assassination was caught from multiple angles. He was killed in cold blood.
Counting or not counting gang violence? Great.
Oh my God. Go, run.
Counting or not counting
The group
gang violence?
Kirk co-founded Turning Point USA played a key role in driving young voter support for President Trump in November. President Trump described Kirk's murder as a dark moment for America. He lashed out at the radical left after the shooting and promised to crack down on those responsible for shooting and other political violence.
To my great fellow Americans, I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah. Charlie inspired millions, and tonight all who knew him and loved him are united in shock and horror. This is a dark moment for America. Charlie Kirk traveled the nation, joyfully engaging with everyone interested in good faith debate. His mission was to bring young people into the political process, which he did better than anybody ever. It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now.
In the first 6 months of 2025, the US experienced about 150 politically motivated attacks, nearly twice as many as over the same period last year. Donald Trump was twice the target of assassination attempts. He survived. His brush with a bullet at an outdoor rally in Pennsylvania bears striking similarities to Wednesday's shooting in Utah, both playing out before gathered crowd at outdoor venue. Earlier this year, 2 Democratic state legislators in Minnesota were shot in their homes, with one dying from the wounds. 2 years before that, a hammer-wielding assailant broke into the home of then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and bludgeoned her husband with a hammer. In 2017, a man opened fire on Republican congressmen practicing on a Northern Virginia baseball field. Seconds before he was shot, Kirk, the father of 2 young children, was being questioned by an audience member about gun violence. Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America in the last 10 years? Kirk was asked. He responded, counting or not counting gang violence. He was shot moments later.
So I was about 15 to 20 feet away from him, standing kind of towards the right direction of the booth where Charlie was. Basically, I just heard a shot, and I saw him falling towards the left, so I knew he got shot on the collarbone or the neck right here, but I didn't see bleed immediately.
They talked about transgender gun violence, and then as the guy said shooting or shooters or something like that, you just hear the gunshot and I'm sorry, you just see his neck just like open up and there's just like so much blood that just came out. It was horrible. And all I felt was like everybody bringing me down to the ground. And I was, sorry. All I hear is screaming and I see people running and I'm like, it's not safe to run. It's not.
And right when that happened, the shot was fired and I looked, saw him leaning over, Charlie leaning over, and everyone just really just jumped down. If the shooter was shooting from a high perspective or whatever, they were just trying to get somewhere where the shooter wouldn't be able to shoot at them. and so they just jumped into the water and stuff like that.
Experts cite a convergence of factors for increased violence in the United States of America. It includes economic insecurity, anxiety over shifting ethnic demographies, and inflammatory tone of political discourse. Three factors that is fueling this violence. The traditional ideological divide between liberals and Democrats, once centered on policy disagreements, have morphed into a deeper, more personal animosity. The anger is amplified by a mix of social media, conspiracy theories, and personal grievances. And last and foremost is the easy availability of guns. I'm joined by Professor Scott Lucas, Professor International Politics, Clinton Institute, University College of Dublin. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me. Sir, is it because of guns, or is it because of this rancid political discourse in the United States of America, where two sides cannot see an eye to eye?
It's both. I mean, that's an easy answer, which unfortunately some people are not acknowledging. On the issue of guns, yesterday it wasn't just Charlie Kirk who was shot. It was also three teenagers in a school in Colorado near where the Columbine massacre took place in 1999. For decades, the U.S. has had hundreds of mass shootings each year because of the easy availability of guns in part. But in this case, if you combine this with the polarization that you've been describing quite well about American society, the idea that rather than finding a consensus on issues, that you have this division rather than dialogue, that you have confrontation and hatred rather than respect with tolerance. Now that's come from across the political spectrum, but one of the sad aspects of this is that a lot of the divisive and hateful rhetoric has actually come from the Trump camp, and indeed from Donald Trump himself for years. And my worry is that while remembering that Charlie Kirk was a father, that remembering that Charlie Kirk was a husband, that we also have to remember that Charlie Kirk was amongst those who were supporters of Donald Trump, who fed this division, who quite often expressed very confrontational views. And I think all sides in America have to rethink what they're doing. And they have to try to find a way, which is one which doesn't just simply blame the social media, although this amplifies it. This has to be finding a different way of political conversation in the United States now. And unfortunately, the statement from Donald Trump last night, which effectively tried to say that the left should be attacked because of this, even before we know who the shooter is, that's exactly the wrong tone to be striking at this point.
Professor, Abraham Lincoln, JFK, Ronald Reagan, attempt on Donald Trump, political assassinations are not new in the history of the United States of America. It's pretty embedded. But the resurgence of political leaders being attacked in America is something new. Why is that happening?
I think you are right to say that America has been a violent culture. We have not only the assassinations you cited, but when I was a boy, we had within a few years the assassination attempts, two assassination attempts on Gerald Ford, the assassination attempt on the presidential candidate George Wallace, and of course the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan. But in recent years what we've had is, because of this animosity, because of this hatred, because of this idea of if you don't agree with me, you're my enemy, we've had a proliferation of these attacks. So for example, the Democratic Senator Gabby Giffords from Arizona, who was critically wounded more than a decade ago, the Republican Representative Steve Scalise, who was shot in 2017. And let's not forget that only a few weeks ago that you had a Democratic state legislator who was killed and another who was critically wounded in Minnesota. I'm afraid that there are too many people who feed the violence with their rhetoric and then they excuse it when it occurs. And let me just give you, and I know this is provocative, but let me just give you a parallel as well. It's right to call out the person who shot Charlie Kirk and killed him. It's absolutely essential that you do that. But remember that only a few years ago, when you had the far right who were carrying out political violence in Charlottesville, Virginia, and killed 3 people, that the current president of the United States actually excused them and said, in fact, that they just simply, there were faults on all sides. that when the Capitol of the United States was attacked in January 2021, the current president of the United States excused that violence, even though those people in the Capitol threatened the execution of the vice president and of the Speaker of the House. So, I can tell you this, but it's going to take action in America, and it's going to take action from all sides, and it needs to start with those legislators in Washington. Thoughts and prayers are not enough. You have got to approach social issues with a way that brings Americans together rather than trying to divide them. And you have to approach those who are non-Americans who live in America, including Indians who live there, with tolerance and respect rather than seeing them as outsiders.
Professor Scott Lucas, there's been a great debate on controlling gun culture in America. But gun culture is also part of the American Constitution. If I'm not wrong, I think it's the Second Amendment, sir. The right to bear arms, and it is ingrained in the larger politics and society of the American culture, right to bear the arm. Now both right and the liberal politicians have been the target of this gun culture. Even then there is no consensus in the United States of America. Why? Is it because of the military industrial complex, or is it because of the politics that is organized around it?
No, well, first of all, the Second Amendment, that's a misreading. Not every individual has the right to bear arms in America. What the Second Amendment actually says is that America has the right to organize militia of citizens. Why did they have that Second Amendment? We didn't have an army in the 18th century, and when we were worried about the British attacking us again, we had to be able to defend ourselves. But that myth about the Second Amendment feeds a political culture, which is, in the words of the late actor Charlton Heston, who's the head of the National Rifle Association, if guns are out, you will take this gun from my dead cold hands. Now, that political culture, that we should all be ready to defend ourselves against someone who's going to attack us, intersects with a lot of money. The money in American politics to keep guns flourishing everywhere starts with the National Rifle Association. Most politicians, Democrat and Republican, get money from the National Rifle Association, and therefore they're invested in not doing anything about it. The last major measure against guns that was approved by the Congress was more than 25 years ago, after the Columbine massacre in Colorado that I referred to earlier. And since then, legislators either are not courageous enough or they are invested enough in making sure that there is no significant gun control to deal with this violence.
But Professor, there is something called outrage in politics, and it's a great sentiment in making things change if there's a proper outrage. Political assassinations, school shootings, gang wars, the cross-border wars in terms of the way immigrants are being captured. It's not causing any outrage in context of guns in America. Why?
I just refer you to the fact that when we had a spate of mass shootings during Donald Trump's first term, I could talk to you about the Las Vegas killing, in which almost 60 people died within minutes. I could talk to you about the killings in Buffalo, in the shopping mall in Dayton, Ohio, in the synagogue in Pittsburgh, in the church in Sycamore Springs in Texas, or in South Carolina. That the politicians would line up and say, oh, thoughts and prayers, but then they would divert from the issue and say, oh, it must be a mental health issue. They just simply will not cut off that source of money that might support their campaigns, or they worry that too many of their voters who've grown up with the myths around guns will not vote for them in the next campaign. And unless you have this from the grassroots, from local communities and from the states to do this will not change. The problem here is that we do have individual states where there have been movements for gun control in recent years to try to limit guns. But the Trump administration has threatened to clamp down on those states who restrict guns. So again, this is a problem across America, but it starts at the top of American politics. I wish I could tell you there's an easy answer for this, but I'm probably going to tell you that within a few weeks I'll be talking to you again about another mass shooting. And it may not be someone like Charlie Kirk. It may just be a child, a mother, a father. I'll be talking to you about this because America simply does not have the political will to deal with the fact that it is killing its own people on a daily basis.
Why can't politicians come together on an issue which really concerns the civil society and not just their political or vested political interest. Because if you look at this, Trump himself has been a target of assassination. The person who had organized young groups for him in the elections in November, he got assassinated today. Don't you think that there can be a counter pull from the MAGA crowd, because MAGA crowd is at the receiving end?
I wish, but let me tell you what the words of Charlie Kirk were in 2023. Charlie Kirk was one of the leading voices against any type of gun control. And when he spoke about this in
That's ironic, sir.
Yeah, it is, but it's worse than ironic, because let me give you what he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but only a little bit here. And what he said is, it was worth people being killed by gun violence in the United States for individuals to retain their Second Amendment, what he said were their Second Amendment rights to have guns. In other words, civilians, citizens, foreign nationals in the United States who were killed by guns were acceptable collateral damage. So he and others could continue to carry guns, whether or not they were going to use them violently or not.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much for joining me and providing us the clarity on why America lacks reconciliation on the issue on who should bear arm and who should not. So this was on point 2. The next on point is on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's trip to Manipur. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will visit Manipur this weekend. Authorities in Manipur are preparing for 2 separate rallies in Imphal and Churachandpur that Prime Minister Modi will address. This will be Prime Minister Modi's first visit to the state after violence broke out in May 2023. Manipur has been roiled by sweeping ethnic violence since May 2023 in a widespread conflict that has claimed 260 lives and displaced another 50,000 people in the initial phase. 15,000 people continue to be internally displaced. Last week, 2 prominent Kuki-Zo groups signed the suspension of operation agreement with the government on renegotiated terms and conditions, under which they agreed on maintaining territorial integrity of Manipur, relocating designated camps away from vulnerable areas, and working for a solution to bring lasting peace and stability in the state. On this issue, I am joined by Michael Lamjathang Haukip, Thado leader, who also functioned as a spokesperson for Bharatiya Janata Party. Michael, a very warm welcome to you for joining me.
Thank you. Good evening, Kartikeya.
Your opening comments on Prime Minister Modi's visit to Manipur.
Prime Minister Modi's visit is both timely and appropriate. The situation has finally become conducive, not too early, not too late, making this a perfect moment for community engagement with both the warring communities. As a Thado indigenous people from Manipur, our position is very clear that Manipur's territorial integrity remains intact and peace prevails, and we are happy. And we are not opposed to anything other than which is against coexistence, mutual coexistence within the Manipur territory. So any attempt towards cultural erasure or act of terrorism against the Thado community is totally unacceptable from the Thado part. So we welcome him. And Government of India consistently used to refer the present conflict as ethnic, meaning it is Kuki versus Meitei. But the definition of Kuki is disputed by many, despite the emotions being very high with the so-called non-Naga tribes who are affected without having a platform. Finally, the Ministry of Home Affairs have legitimized the insurgent group Kuki militants, particularly UPF and KNO, and started taking a step by engaging with them and extending the agreed ground rules with some newly renegotiated term that also pave a way to the so-called non-Naga tribes who are influenced by the so-called UPF and KNOs, that beyond the joint monitoring group, they have been given a platform to discuss their issues, wherein a settlement can be arrived in a time-bound manner called a negotiated political settlement under the Constitution of India without affecting the territorial integrity of Manipur. That gives hopes and ray of light to the Kuki insurgent group. And at the same time, the Kuki-Zo Council simultaneously also agreed to open the highway, particularly the national highway connecting Dimapur, Guwahati, all those from Imphal. In such a scenario, both the Kuki groups and the Meitei groups have finally agreed to engage. That shows that the sovereignty of India, the power of government of India is still...
Michael, two very specific questions. Do you think that there's a possibility of Bharatiya Janata Party trying to form the government after Prime Minister?
Absolutely, possibility is always there at any point in time.
You think it's possible?
Absolutely, it's possible.
Do you think new leadership is being groomed?
Yeah, new leader and all, yes, of course, a new leader is required.
So what is the roadmap ahead? Because right now, two breakthroughs have happened. The first breakthrough is the Sioux agreements. You may have a different opinion on that. The second is on the Manipur's territorial integrity. Yes, there is a boycott call by Naga groups. What sort of expectations you have from Prime Minister's speech? What sort of announcements do you expect from the Prime Minister's speech this time? One I expect is there is going to be a lot of effort to pull reconciliation.
Prime Minister's visit should be a landmark and historic. But this time though, he visited as a healing touch, because despite all the hectic schedule, he tried to manage to drop into Manipur, that also in two locations. That is a healing touch. I don't expect anything kind of a big declaration or something. I think this is a healing touch, because in the last two and a half years almost, both the people of Manipur, respective of communities, have suffered. I think this is just only a healing touch. I don't expect any declaration or announcement from Prime Minister.
But then there is one issue. 15,000 people continue to languish in the camps. Internally displaced people. That has not been resolved as of now.
Absolutely, community understanding will happen. With this, now government has been trusted. Both the groups, Kuki groups and the Meitei groups, have trust to the government of India, repose their faith. In such a scenario, I'm sure that both the communities will be in talking terms, and with that community understanding only this can be resolved, not through Prime Minister visiting or not through by means of military power or President's rule. So obviously the roadmap is community understanding, and I'm sure that will happen for sure.
Michael, before I let go of you, civil society actors have already and always taken positions which are independent from the authority in Manipur. Even in this context, a Meitei-dominated civil society organization has taken a very different position. Do you think that current dispensation has the political stamina to bring these, first of all, people on a common space, or to marginalize them so that they can actually create space for an inter-ethnic dialogue in Manipur, people to people?
Absolutely, that will happen, because now Government of India, Ministry of Home Affairs, after a long time, they have taken steps. You will see Arambai Kengal taking a reverse gear and trying to reconcile, welcoming the suspension of operation agreement. I'm pretty sure, because both the communities have agreed to talk and discuss their grievances with the Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India. So I think that is going to happen very soon, because the sovereignty of India has prevailed finally, and two communities have agreed to listen to the Government of India as well, and the Kuki militants also, who have their own civil society groups, Kuki-Zo Council. Simultaneous agreement was signed on 4th September. That clearly shows that they repose their faith to the Home Ministry.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Hauke, for joining me on this show. So this is all I had on point today. I will see you tomorrow at the same time. Thank you and good night.
ट्रस्टेड लॉयर शर्मा जी ने अपने दीवारों पर जेके मैक्स पेंट्स क्या लगवाया। अजीब अजीब बहाने लेकर आने लगे पड़ोसी उनका घर देखने।
हाय शर्मा जी, एक रील बना लूं उस ब्यूटीफुल सी वॉल के पास।
हमारा टोमी नहीं मिल रहा, यहाँ आया